In the United States, an estimated 10 million women and 1 million men suffer from an eating disorder. The highest rate happens during the spring and summer months.
Jennifer Lombardi has battled anorexia herself and now teaches kids, parents, and healthcare professionals. Good morning. Thanks for joining us, Jennifer.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
How long did you battle anorexia, and how did you get through it?
Well, my eating disorder technically started when I was about 17, and so for about 5 years, for the greater part of 5 years, I was struggling. But you know, when I look back now, I definitely think there were signs and symptoms that started, you know, as young as age 8, 9, and 10. And I definitely see that with the work that I do now with admissions work and assessing people for treatment. I'm assessing kids younger and younger every single year.
Wow, and why is that?
You know, I definitely think that our culture plays a part in that. I don't agree that our culture is the only reason why people struggle. I mean, certainly one of the ways that I explain it to families and to patients is that, you know, you think of an eating disorder kind of like a puzzle, and there are 5 pieces. Typically, there's a genetic predisposition. Usually there's underlying anxiety or depression. And then in addition to that, cultural components, family dynamics, trauma or loss, and definitely there's a lot of research in personality traits. People with eating disorders tend to be highly perfectionistic, very people-pleasing, very harm-avoidant. And so when you look at all of those pieces and you put them together, you get a better understanding of why people struggle. But going back to the younger ages, I definitely think the cultural component has sort of trickled down to kids who are younger and younger. I've done prevention work in kindergarten and first grade classes, and kids that young already know what diets are. They know that being fat is very bad in our culture, and they fear being picked on and being ostracized. So there is definitely a lot more pressure and emphasis for young kids today.
What should parents do if they see some of these symptoms, or what are key things they should look for in a youngster as young as you're talking about?
Well, I think that one of the things that we have to do as parents, I mean, I have 2 children of my own, I think we have to really take stock and assess ourselves and look in our cupboards and see what types of foods we're keeping there. One of the things that's incredibly important for me personally as a recovered person, and then what we try to teach our patients, is that there is no such thing as good or bad food. We really try to teach patients moderation. And in our culture, we talk about trying to do balance and moderation, but that is not how we speak about food. We vilify foods as good or bad, junk food or healthy food, when in reality, if we're going to talk about moderation and teach balance, we need to model that to our kids. And so with parents, one of the things we ask them to do is to look at what is available in the home, but then of course also look at how they're speaking about food when they're around kids, and in particular how they're speaking about their own bodies. And if they're making any kind of disparaging comments, to stop that and really start talking about how the body is beautiful and what it can do and what it's capable of.
We appreciate you sharing this insight and your story with us here on Great Day, but you are also sharing it with another audience today. Will you tell us about that?
Yes, so one of the things that we're doing, our treatment center is based in Sacramento, and
what's it called?
Summit Eating Disorders Program. And we do offer, even though it's in Sacramento, we do offer housing and make it available to people. So we have patients come from as far north as Redding and the Oregon border, all the way down to Bakersfield, because they have the ability to stay with us in treatment. And that's true for both adults as well as children, because we have family housing available so that parents can be involved in treatment. So one of the things that we try to do is educate physicians in communities about what signs and symptoms to look for and how to triage these patients, because eating disorders do have the highest death rate of any mental illness, and so early detection and treatment is absolutely imperative.
And so you're talking with doctors today?
Yes, so we're going into physician offices, doing breakfast, doing lunches, and meeting with them and giving them information about eating disorders.
Do you think doctors are not quite up to speed as far as treating eating disorders like this?
I definitely think most physicians are very well intended, but even for myself as a licensed therapist, when you're in graduate school or medical school, you don't get a lot of education on eating disorders. And so oftentimes, you know, with no ill will whatsoever, they have no idea what they're looking at. Patients can oftentimes have a very low heart rate, and that's misinterpreted as, you know, this is a patient who's very athletic, and so their heart rate is low not because they're malnourished, but because they're a runner. And so sometimes they miss the signs and symptoms. And so one of the things that we try to do is give them sort of a checklist so that they can be aware of all the medical complications that can occur. And some of those even include, I mean, we have patients that are as young as 13 who have osteoporosis. So it can happen very quickly, some of these dangerous things.
But you also know that you can get pretty good at manipulating people.
Yeah, that's very true.
To look elsewhere and to not not call you on it.
Absolutely, and you know, one of the things that I say to families is, you know, you may have a son or a daughter who is academically doing very well spoken, very polite, high achieving, and so you'd never suspect that this person would be lying and be very deceptive, but they are, and that is not because they're a bad person, but that's part of the illness. There's a tremendous amount of shame that goes behind an eating disorder, and so naturally people who are struggling want to protect other people from seeing that. And the other thing is that for them it's a coping mechanism, so the idea of letting the eating disorder go seems very scary to them.
Yeah, because it's one thing they have control over.
It is, but one of the things that we know about the research going on in biology and in personality traits is one of the things, there is a biochemical piece behind this. And so for people who struggle with anorexia, bulimia, and even binge eating disorder, it alters your brain chemistry and it causes a sedating and numbing effect. So if I'm a person who tends to be highly anxious or depressed, all I know is that when I engage in these behaviors, I feel better. I feel less anxious, I feel more calm, I feel more focused. So there's a biological hook that most people are not aware of whatsoever.
Well, thank you so much for opening up our eyes.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And to many physicians we'll be meeting with today. If you would like any more information on Summit Eating Disorders and Outreach Program, log on to kmph.com, look for their link under News Links. We hope this has helped you.
We'll be right back.